Welcome back to Legends and Lore. It is the quintessential story of tragic romance. It's a tale that has inspired operas, paintings, poems, and blockbuster films for over 2,000 years. It is the blueprint for the star-crossed lovers, but with a supernatural, terrifying twist. Today, we aren't just retelling a simple fairy tale. We are diving deep into Greek mythology's most heartbreaking saga, the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. This is a story about the absolute limits of human love. It's about a grief so profound it literally cracked open the earth. It asks the question, if you had the chance to bring someone you loved back from the dead, would you have the discipline to follow the rules? We're going to explore the incredible power of Orpheus's music, the terrifying geography of the Greek underworld, and finally, try to answer the question that has plagued scholars for centuries. Why did he look back? If you love deep dives into ancient legends and mythology explained, make sure you subscribe. Let's descend into the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. To understand the tragedy, we first need to understand the height from which they fell. Our protagonist is Orpheus. In the pantheon of Greek heroes, Orpheus wasn't known for his sword arm or his strategic mind. His weapon was sound. He was the son of Oeagrus, a Thracian king, and the muse Calliope, the muse of epic poetry. Some legends even whisper that his true father was Apollo, the god of music himself. Regardless of his lineage, his talent was divine. When Orpheus played his lyre, the world stopped. It's said that wild beasts would lie down gently beside him, trees would uproot themselves to move closer to the melody, and even rocks would shift to hear him play. He could soothe the anger of gods and bring peace to the most turbulent souls. A man with such a soul was destined to love deeply, and he found his match in Eurydice. She was an oak nymph, a dryad, a creature of nature and abounding beauty. Their connection was instantaneous and absolute. For a brief, shining moment in Greek mythology, everything was perfect. Their wedding day was a celebration of pure joy. Hymen, the god of marriage, was invited to bless the union. But even then, there were omens. Hymen's torch smoked heavily, refusing to burn bright, bringing tears to the eyes of the guests. It was a subtle warning that this golden happiness was brittle. The tragedy struck almost immediately after the wedding. Depending on which version of the myth you read, Ovid or Virgil, the details shift slightly, but the outcome is the same. Eurydice was wandering in the meadows. In the most common version, she was being pursued by a minor shepherd god named Aristeus, who was obsessed with her beauty. In her desperate attempt to flee him, she didn't watch where she was stepping. A viper, hidden in the tall grass, struck her heel. The venom was potent and fast. The beautiful oak nymph died there in the meadow, her life cut short before it had truly begun. When Orpheus found her, his world ended. The grief of Orpheus was unlike anything the mortal world had seen. He didn't just weep, he poured his agony into his music. He played songs so agonizingly sad that the gods themselves wept in their beds on Mount Olympus. The nymphs of the forests dressed in black. His music turned from a celebration of life into a funeral dirge for the world. But Orpheus was not content to just grieve. His love was a living thing, and he refused to accept the finality of death. If his music could move rocks and trees, perhaps it could move the rulers of the dead. He made an impossible choice. He would not wait for death to reunite them. He would go to her. He would descend into Hades. The journey of a living mortal into the underworld, a katabasis in ancient Greek, is a rare feat reserved for only the greatest heroes, like Heracles or Odysseus. But they went armed with strength or wit. Orpheus went armed only with a lyre. He found a cavern mouth said to lead to the realm below. As he descended, the air grew cold and stale, heavy with the scent of decay. His first obstacle was the river Styx, the boundary between earth and the underworld. Here, Charon, the grim ferryman, demanded payment to cross, and usually refused passage to the living. Orpheus didn't offer a coin. He struck the strings of his lyre. The melody he played was so mesmerizing that Charon, a being devoid of emotion for eternity, stopped his polling. Silently, entranced, he allowed the living musician onto his boat. On the far shore sat Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound that guarded the gates of Hades. His job was to ensure no one entered who wasn't dead, and more importantly, that no one ever left. As Orpheus approached, the beast snarled, its 3 sets of jaws snapping. Orpheus kept walking and began to sing. He sang of open fields, of sunlight, of things the beast had never known. The monstrous dog stopped, lowered its heads, and let him pass, lulled into a trance. Finally, he reached the heart of the underworld, the throne room of Hades, the king of the dead, and his reluctant queen, Persephone. This was the ultimate test. Hades was not known for mercy. He was the cold administrator of an immutable law. What dies, stays dead. Orpheus stood before them and played. He didn't play a song of demand or anger. He played the story of his love for Eurydice. He sang of the brevity of life and how unfair it was that her thread was cut so short. The ancient poets tell us that as Orpheus played, the very machinery of hell stopped. Tantalus, forever thirsty, stopped reaching for the water. Sisyphus rested from pushing his boulder. The Furies, the spirits of vengeance, wept for the first time in history. Persephone, remembering her own stolen life in the sun above, was deeply moved. Even the iron heart of Hades thawed. They couldn't resist the raw power of his grief. Hades agreed. Eurydice could go. But the gods never give gifts without conditions. Hades grated the request with one simple, terrifying rule. Orpheus must lead Eurydice out of the underworld. She would follow behind him. But until both of them had completely stepped out into the sunlight of the upper world, Orpheus must not look back at her. Not a glance. Not a peek to see if she was there. If he looked back before the journey was complete, she would return to the dead forever. It seemed easy, but imagine that walk. The journey up was long, steep, and shrouded in absolute silence. Orpheus couldn't hear her footsteps, as she was still a shade, a spirit not yet fully corporeal. Every step was torture. Was she there? Had Hades tricked him? Was he walking alone like a fool while the gods laughed below? The doubt began to eat away at him. His love, the very thing that drove him into hell, was now competing with his human frailty, his fear and his impatience. Finally, the air grew warmer. Ahead, a faint grey light appeared. The exit. The mouth of the cave. Orpheus stepped out of the darkness and felt the sun on his face. He had done it. The impossible quest was over. Overwhelmed with relief and desperate to share the moment with his wife, he turned around. He turned too soon. He was in the sun, but Eurydice was still just a step behind, still in the shadows of the cavern entrance. The condition was broken. As he looked at her, she didn't scream. She didn't cry out in anger. According to Ovid, she simply murmured a final farewell and melted away like smoke in the wind, pulled back down into the darkness for eternity. Orpheus tried to grasp her, but his arms held only empty air. He had lost her twice, and the second time was entirely his fault. Orpheus tried to rush back down, but Charon refused him passage. The gates were closed. The rest of Orpheus's life was a slow fade. He returned to Thrace, but he was a broken man. He swore off the love of women completely. He continued to play his music, but it was always tinged with an unbearable sorrow. His end was violent. A group of Maenads, frenzied female worshippers of Dionysus, insulted by his rejection of women and his constant grieving, attacked him during one of their drunken rites. They tore the greatest musician the world had ever known limb from limb. His head and his lyre were thrown into the river Hebrus, still singing sad songs as they floated out to sea. But the Greeks gave him a final, bittersweet mercy. In death, his soul returned to the underworld. There, he finally found Eurydice among the shades. And there, the poets say, they walk together still. And sometimes, Orpheus walks ahead and looks back. For now, it is safe to do so. So why does this story stick with us? Why did he look back? Some say it was a test of faith that he failed. Others say it's a commentary on the nature of intense love, that it is inherently anxious and irrational. Perhaps the most poignant interpretation is that Orpheus looked back simply because he was human. He achieved a divine feat through his music, but in the end, he was mortal, subject to doubt and fear. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest thing to do in life is to simply trust, move forward, and not look back at what we've lost. What do you think? Was Orpheus foolish to turn around, or was his mistake inevitable? Let me know your theories in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this journey into Greek myth, please leave a like, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more deep dives into history and legend. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video.